Hello, hello. It's time for another episode of Leading Women in Tech. I'm your host, Toni Collis, your career bestie, your leadership bestie, and the place you need to come for everything being a leading woman in tech. Today, we're talking about the unique and powerful technique of quiet leadership. Over the years, I've worked with hundreds of women who are concerned that they aren't getting ahead because they are naturally quiet. Indeed, some of them have said to me, I can't be a leader or an executive because I don't want to be loud. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be in the room shouting like the others or something like that. Sometimes not that extreme, but you get the idea. Today, I want you to know that being loud isn't necessary. In fact, sometimes it's very unhelpful. So contrary to what we are often shown and see around us, leadership isn't just about being loud, making big public speeches, or always being in the spotlight. It's about being authentic, listening, focusing on the team. If you're a naturally quiet person, I want you to know this doesn't stop you from being a great and powerful leader. In fact, it can make you even more powerful, in my opinion. So let's unpick this myth about being quiet or loud and what it means for your leadership. How you can embrace your naturally quiet leadership style if that's you and get success. And instances where you need to make sure you are heard and what that really looks like. I want to start today's episode with a little caveat. If you're not a naturally quiet person, you might be thinking, this episode's not for me. I don't have a problem with being loud. I don't have a problem with standing out. I don't need this episode. And I hear you. I certainly didn't think that of myself. Here's why I do want you to listen. There will be people around you who are naturally quiet. And I want you to hear the strength that they have. I want you to hear from me how you need to be nurturing them. The conversation I'm having with you is the conversation I want you to have with them about how they can step up, how you can coach them, how you can encourage them to step into their greatness. Get them to listen to this episode. Equally, I had some hard lessons in my early career. And one of them was that I'm not a naturally quiet person. One of the things that usually get me into trouble is that I will speak my mind. I had a bit of reputation for that, which sometimes backfired. And that meant that I had to learn how to be that quiet leader at times. And when I figured that out, it did me so much good. So whether you're naturally quiet or not, I want you to listen to this episode. Quiet leadership is an approach to leadership that harnesses your or someone else's naturally quiet personality. It often, but not always, goes hand in hand with introversion. So I want to start by explaining what introversion is before we go deeper, because most of us do not understand what introvert versus extrovert is. Introversion is the personality trait that's characterized by how we gain our energy. We gain energy from being with ourselves rather than with others. It does not mean that an introvert is shy. Quite the contrary. I am not shy at all, and I'm an extreme introvert. What we're really getting at with introverts is a need to recharge our batteries by being on our own, instead of the recharge from being around people. And this is something we tend to not understand about other people. If we're extroverts, we tend to assume everybody gets energy from being around other people, get energized by that. And if we're introverts, we don't comprehend why other people don't understand why we just need to go and cry in a corner because we're so tired of being around people, right? An introvert often feels energized by solitary activities and may find social interactions draining. Doesn't mean we don't like social interactions, but all of us, introverts and extroverts, all need solitary time and social time. But the balance of how you recharge your empty batteries or do your best thinking explains your natural introvert or extrovert tendencies. I had a lady I worked with many, many years ago who explained this to me beautifully. She was like, after you've got off a 14-hour long-haul flight, and you shouldn't go to bed because you need to stay up in order to reset your body clock, what do? If you're an introvert, you will probably just go and sit at home with a book, try and keep yourself awake, but you'll need to be by yourself because you're just done. The extrovert will pick up the phone and organize to meet a friend. It almost doesn't matter who they meet. They might need to just go out to a cafe, but they'll want to be around people because that's how we recharge. The introverts recharge on their own. The extroverts recharge by being around other people. Now, if we're extremely tired, it doesn't matter if you're an extrovert, you still need to be on your own. And if you're an introvert, you still need social interaction. But being a quiet introvert or a quiet extrovert is what we're really talking about today. So introverts and quiet do go together, but not all the time. And I'm certainly an example of extreme introvert and not particularly quiet. So you can be a quiet extrovert or a quiet introvert. And that is someone who holds their tongue, whether they like being around people or not. Their key strengths tend to include deep thinking and reflection. Quiet leaders excel at thoughtful analysis and deep reflection, which can lead to well-considered decisions, which is why they are so powerful. Their ability to spend time thinking through complex problems results in great ideas, innovation, great strategy. Another strength of the quiet leader is active listening. Quiet leaders are great listeners, which helps them understand their team's needs and concerns. Rather than somebody like me who's naturally jumping to conclusions and wanting to talk, because I have so many ideas and I don't hold back at times, right? The quiet leader, because they don't need to speak, fosters a more supportive environment naturally, where team members feel heard and valued. They possess great empathy and emotional intelligence because they just listen more. Quietness and active listening go hand in hand with high emotional intelligence, along with other things that allow them to connect with others on a deeper level. This is why for quiet leaders, they find it easier to build that strong, trusting relationship with their team, which is essential for effective leadership. Those of us who aren't as quiet have to actively build these skills. What I really want to highlight to you with this episode is that whatever your natural tendency, let's harness it, right? If you've got a natural approach, it's a superpower. That becomes your superpower. One of the philosophies I have in all the coaching I do, and it's actually part of the Ignite coaching philosophy. That's our framework for coaching that we use. It's the framework I teach my coaches. If you ever want to train as a coach, you will learn the Ignite coaching framework. And part of our philosophy is everybody has a superpower, and you can lean into that to do amazing things. The quiet leader has a natural superpower around understanding the team's needs and concerns because they are just more likely to listen. That doesn't mean that other people can't learn to listen. I've certainly learned how to listen. I'm a coach. It's kind of the job, right? I have other superpowers, right? But I want you to hear, if you are naturally quiet, you have probably extraordinary emotional intelligence built in. Empathy that maybe needs honing and refining, but it's probably built in. The ability to make your team members heard is probably built in. There's other things that we're going to come to later in this episode, which you're going to need to work at. But remember, you've got a superpower here. You can build strong, trusting relationships with those around you simply because you listen. And that is a superpower worth paying attention to. The other thing that goes hand in hand with being a quiet leader, and this also goes hand in hand with introversion, which we're going to talk about more in the next solo episode in a couple of weeks' time. But this advantage of focus and concentration. If you're quiet and you need less noise, which is likely to go hand in hand with that introversion piece, you're able to maintain focus for long periods because it is the noise that often distracts us. Now, if you need noise because that's the kind of person you are, you're actually just going to find it harder to maintain focus. So if you're naturally quiet, you're more likely to find focus more easily in the day. So you're able to tackle detailed, complex problems without getting as easily distracted as those around you. This ability to concentrate deeply is incredibly important, and why I think quiet leaders often are extraordinary. They're just holding themselves back a little bit because they think, I don't want to stand up and talk about this. But their ability to problem solve and think in innovative ways is amazing. The other thing I love about the quiet leader, and this is where I really learned this firsthand from a mentor of mine who was a naturally quiet leader, but extraordinary, like right up there, C-level executive, but quiet. She was calm and composed. The quiet demeanor that quiet leaders have means they appear calm under pressure, providing a steadying influence during crises. And I've talked about leading through crises many times on this podcast because it's such a big issue for us. One of the things I had to learn how to do was appear calm in a crisis and under pressure. There was actually one time when I was told, "You appear really stressed, Toni," and I was not stressed. But what happens in a crisis for somebody like me who is not naturally quiet and somebody who hadn't at that point learned how to internally process, I externally processed. I was solving problems out loud. I was thinking a million miles an hour faster than those around me, which is why I was so good at being in a crisis. Except I left everybody behind me in my wake. If you're a naturally quiet leader, your composed nature can help maintain team morale and prevent panic in stressful situations. Because if you're quiet, you likely have already learned how to internally process rather than externally process. You spend a lot more time thinking things through in your head, which means you appear more calm. So why is not being comfortable with the limelight not a bad thing? Effective leadership requires constant visibility, but that isn't the same as being the center of attention. Many successful leaders work behind the scenes. They drive results through strategic insights, quiet influence. I talk so much about quiet influence in my clients, especially the ones like me who are naturally in everything and talking to everybody all the time. Sometimes the best thing is to quietly influence people behind the scenes. But we don't see this role model to us because it's done behind the scenes and done quietly. Quiet leaders influence through their actions, integrity, consistent performance, the relationships in the one-on-one that creates a strong, stable foundation for a team or organization. So if you're rising up in your career, looking for a role model of a quiet leader, you're not going to see very much of it by definition because they're quiet. They're not in your face. So many of us think that being a quiet leader is not a thing. When we are quiet, we're also creating space for others. By not seeking the limelight, we create opportunities for others to shine. This inclusive approach allows more collaboration. Your team feels more empowered to contribute and grow because of their contribution. But to do this, we have to be authentic to ourselves. We have to be true to ourselves. We have to accept that this is a strength we have. Quiet leaders get to be authentic by embracing their natural tendency to create an environment that values thoughtfulness and reflection. And that is needed so much today in the workplace. Another key thing that the quiet leader has is balance. When we are quiet, we can complement the louder people around us. We create a balanced leadership style that harnesses diverse strengths. Now, the challenge here is making sure you're still heard enough. And I'm going to come to this in a little bit. But I think this is why we think being a quiet leader isn't possible. Because if you've got lots of loud people in a room and you're the quiet one, it doesn't feel like balance. But I want you to know it is. I've worked with enough women who are naturally quiet that when they've learned their power, the room shuts down when they do speak up, because whenever they do speak up, what they have to say is so powerful that the room knows they have to listen to her. This balance of the loud leader versus the quiet leader makes better, well-rounded decision-making and problem-solving. Because as a quiet leader, you're more likely to excel in long-term planning and strategic thinking because of the way your brain works. Your ability to focus on the bigger picture and think deeply about the future means that the organization needs to hear from you. But it doesn't mean you have to be loud about it. It means when it's appropriate, you speak up and make sure you're heard. Lastly, resilience and persistence are an essential quality of the quiet leader. This deliberate ability to stay focused means you are more resilient. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be perfectly, magically not susceptible to the things that burn us all out, but you're going to have persistence in pursuing goals. Most of us who are quiet leaders or introverts are more persistent. It's why there are more, where did I read this? I can't remember where I read this. So I'd love somebody to chime in on this, reach out to me and let me know if you've read this too. But there are more CEOs in Fortune 500 who are introverts and extroverts, which is not what we would think. Given extroverts are the dominant personality of the two in society. And we tend to think extroverts are the outgoing, like they would make naturally good CEOs. Actually, Fortune 500, the majority of the CEOs are introverts. And I think it comes down to this thoughtful deliberation, our ability to stay focused, follow through, be persistent, not seeking immediate recognition. And being a CEO is all about not getting immediate recognition, believe me. If you ever want coaching as a CEO, come talk to me, because it is a lonely business, but such a powerful one. But what it means is, if we can lean into this, that ability to be persistent means to long-term achievements, which is harder for other people. Again, if this is not naturally you, I want you to know you can learn this stuff. But if this is naturally you, I want you to embrace it. It's not a limitation. It's a powerful asset. Embrace and leverage, because your team will get success because it's authentically you. I want you to now understand what it means to be reassuring and stabilizing for your team. When you have this naturally quiet demeanor, there's going to be a level of tranquility, especially if you don't allow somebody else to derail it. I think this is where our stress can come in. If we're a leader who likes peace and quiet, but we allow somebody on our team to be loud, you aren't fostering that peaceful work environment where stress levels are minimized because you are intimidated by that team member. Remember, if you're the lead, you're in charge. And I say this all the time to my clients, but it's not a democracy. The workplace is not a democracy. Even our democracies, I would argue that the people running them are not running democracies. It's only a democracy in terms of who we elect, right? The politicians run teams. The teams do what they're told. The democracy is a thing that we don't really do in the rest of our lives except in voting. And so if you are being walked over by somebody louder, you need to tackle that, because part of your superpower is creating that peaceful work environment where stress levels are minimized. That allows your team to thrive, even if they're naturally loud themselves. Sometimes quiet leaders are soft-spoken, not always, but often. And I think this is where we come across this, I'm too timid to speak. I'm too timid to be a leader. But softly spoken doesn't mean timidity. It means choosing your words carefully, speaking with intention. It means making sure your communication is clear, concise, and impactful. It's allowing space for others to speak, encouraging more participation, allowing those diverse perspectives, which are the gold in an organization, simply because you're mindful of how you speak and how you invite others to speak. You're going to have more belonging, more respect from your team. Everyone's going to feel more valued. If you're listening to this and thinking, I'm quiet, timid, but I don't think I'm very empathetic, then listen to this one. Active listening is something that the quiet leader is naturally good at, as we've already talked about. But what does it actually mean? So you might be naturally quiet, but to turn that into active listening, what we're doing is fully focusing on the speaker. Sometimes we're quiet because we're fully focusing on what's going on in our own head. I want you to learn to fully focus on the person in front of you. Now, we've talked a lot again about active listening in this podcast over the years. But if you are a naturally quiet person, you're going to find turning on active listening so much easier than those of us who aren't. You need to turn that inner thought to the person in front of you, understand their message, take the time to respond thoughtfully. This builds trust, strengthens relationships. By listening more than you speak as a quiet leader, you're going to better understand your team's needs and concerns. But then make sure that you do actually speak when you need to, because you're going to have space for deep reflection. You're going to have the ability to think deeply about decisions and risk strategies. You're going to make more informed, thoughtful decisions. And I think one of the things about people who spend a lot of time reflecting like this, who come across as quiet, you spend a lot more time learning from past experiences, both successes and failures, which brings that opportunity for continuous growth. Now, the thing we've got to watch out for here is when that quietness is coming from self-judgment. So I want you to learn from the past to foster growth. But if you find yourself focusing on how bad you are, all the failures, rather than saying, and that's an opportunity for me to do something differently, and look what I did do well, then we need to work on that. In fact, come and have a conversation with me, right? None of us should be having that continual negative self-talk that's always weighing us down. We want to instead be learning from a healthy past reflection, not from that narrative of, I can't do anything well, everything goes wrong, always focusing on the negative. One of my clients, Karen, is a naturally quiet and thoughtful leader. She built a reputation for making meaningful contributions by speaking only when necessary, with calm authority and poise. She worked in a tech company. She's not retired, but she worked in a tech company with loud, extroverted colleagues. But her insightful input always commanded respect and attention. She came to work with me because she needed to grow more confident in her leadership style. She wanted to no longer feel pressured to conform to being louder, but it was holding her back. So what we did is look at how she was contributing. We would look at how often she was speaking up. Does she need to be speaking up more frequently? Does she need to make sure people are recognizing the value of her insights? And so we worked on this, the frequency, getting the right mix between what she needed and what the company needed, what she was comfortable with. She became a role model for the other quiet, introverted leaders in the organization, proving that quiet leadership could be incredibly powerful and effective. She leveraged her own strengths, her natural inclination towards active listening. We honed it a little bit, but mostly it was already there. Deep thinking was something that was just her superpower. It's why she got as far as she had without working on her leadership style. And what she just needed to do was use that to enhance her influence and team dynamics and not be afraid to bring that out. Her naturally respectful approach, coupled with her strategic thinking, meant that people had immense confidence in her and her effectiveness. And when she moved into a new role, which is the time she came to work with me, she was also able to transform her team's productivity and morale simply because of the amount she listened, and then giving them really powerful focus because she wasn't speaking all of her ideas out loud. When she spoke, she was so consistent in her messaging. Her team always knew what they needed to be focused on. There was no room for ambiguity. She preferred to think things through individually rather than brainstorming in groups, allowing her to thoroughly analyze situations and provide really well-considered solutions. The interesting thing about Karen is when she came to work with me, she was already a kick-ass leader. I don't think she knew it, but she was. I said to her, if I'd had a manager like you, I don't think I would have quit and become a full-time coach. I would have stuck it out. I would have carried on. I wish we had more people like her, but she didn't believe that she was having the impact she did. At the point that she retired, I don't know if she knows this, but at the point she retired, her organization needed her immensely. She did an amazing handover as part of her retirement, but the amount of power that she had by just being quiet and thoughtful, consistent, calm in a crisis, but not afraid to speak up, which is what we worked on. We worked on how and when to speak up, but still being quiet. That woman changed companies for the better, but by leaning into her superpower of being quiet. It's okay if you're like Karen to prefer to think things through individually rather than brainstorming in groups. When we have this naturally independent problem-solving approach, which I do too, so I wonder if that's an introvert thing rather than a quiet thing, right? It allows us to concentrate deeply. By thinking independently, we get to analyze problems from multiple angles. Now, the caveat to this is we need to make sure that we still get feed in from other people, other teams, other data, but you've got to embrace how you naturally work. So I don't brainstorm very well in a group. It's almost like my creativity takes a little bit of a downturn. Be aware of that in yourself. Now, other people, their brain powers up in a group. I seem to somehow not do that. Interestingly, it can't just be an introvert thing because I'm pretty sure my husband thinks really well in a group. I don't know exactly what's going on there. And he's as much of an introvert as I am. So I do wonder if there's something else going on. But understand if you naturally brainstorm well independently or in a group, both are useful and necessary. So again, if you don't naturally do one or the other, you do need to train the other one. But it's okay if your natural inclination is to do this by yourself. Just make sure you are getting the data from other people. Maybe do a group session, then do the stuff on your own and then have a group session. That's how I typically manage this kind of thing with my team. I do a lot of problem solving on my own and I take it to my team for feedback. And I've learned to not make decisions in that feedback meeting because I need to process what they said to me. I am terrible at processing in a team environment because I get too much in my own head. But when we are able to do this, we build really comprehensive understanding. We excel at strategic thinking. And I say that as somebody who is more logistics orientated than strategic orientated. I've had to learn strategic thinking. It is not something that came naturally to me. Most people, I would say the majority of people are not strategic thinkers. The majority of people are logistic thinkers, tactical. I'm naturally very logistic heavy, somewhat tactical, less than strategic, but you can learn it. Leaning into my desire to be on my own and be quiet, although I'm not quiet, but quiet myself, I suppose, has allowed me to learn how to be more strategic. It allows me to have that longer term vision and the steps needed to get there, not just the short term tactics. It allows me to dial in to, is this strategically useful, or is this a tactical thing today that makes me feel good that isn't actually strategically in the right direction? Our ability to think ahead and plan is improved when we have space and quiet. So if you're naturally a quiet person, lean into this. Another thing I think really needs a mention here is other people. Something that is driving me nuts about the current world is the push in 2024 to go back to the office. There's a complete misunderstanding of what different people need. There are people out there who thrive in the office, and there are certainly a lot of poor managers who don't know how to manage except in the office. I would say you're not going to get much better results in person than you are remotely, though. That's a whole other conversation. The quiet leader understands that not everyone works best in a group setting and respects different work styles. I think because as quiet leaders, we and introverts, I say we because I'm talking about the introvert in me here, we don't perform well in the traditional office setting. I do not do well for more than a day in a group. I really don't. I will thrive for a little bit and then I just burn out really, really quickly, which is why I know I'm an extreme introvert. Give me a week at a conference and I need to sleep for a week afterwards. And not just because I'm physically tired, but because I'm emotionally tired. As a quiet leader, understand that everybody has their own way of working. Now, the one that's going to be hard for you to understand is the people that need to be loud, because that's not who you are. Accept that everybody is different. Some of you will want to be thinking quietly for those innovative ideas and solutions on your own. Others will need group time, collaboration, and that's when they do their best thinking. No approach is wrong, and I think you need both in a healthy organization. The key thing as a quiet leader is embrace this balanced approach. Make sure all voices are heard and valued. Even my remote first company, we're all over the world. We don't have an office. We all work from our own homes. Actually, you're allowed to work wherever you want. Like if you go on holiday, as long as you do the work, I don't care, right? I know that some of my team, despite that, need contact. And so we have brainstorming events. I don't thrive in them, but my team does. Equally, I do my best thinking by myself. I do my best thinking at weird times of day or night, and I embrace that. Make sure you create an environment which works for everybody. Have that quiet, thoughtful environment for the quiet people. Have that team culture for the brainstorming and the deliberation with a team that is going to enhance those around you who need that. Remember that as a quiet leader, you should not be afraid of having uninterrupted focus on tasks. And indeed, you can use the fact this comes easily to you to train those who don't have it. Just remember to not get anxious about their lack of progress there. If it's not natural to them, if it's not natural for them to be uninterrupted focus, then train them in it. Be patient. Do remember, though, that one of the things that you have to watch out for is a lack of external input. I certainly found this with myself during COVID, where, lockdowns meant we didn't go out, and I just kind of like, I'm happy with this. Like I was one of the few people who did not mind that. But that meant I wasn't forced to have external input on certain things. Now, in my professional work, it was absolutely sane. I'd work on Zoom all day, not a problem. But my personal life, I found that I wasn't getting any external input because my husband and I were just like, well, we're in lockdown, we can't go out. And our natural inclination to then just contract meant that we weren't getting external input. I mean, it's not like we were trying to solve big problems in our lives or anything. But it really highlighted to me the importance of stepping out your comfort zone. You need to balance deep thought, problem solving that is naturally you with external input. You can't do just one or the other and expect amazing results. You need to do both. Lean into the one you find easy. And if it's your team, remember them being quiet is maybe exactly what they need. But then make sure that we all are getting the thing that doesn't come naturally to us. I don't want to talk about being calm. I think one of the things that those who are naturally quiet have is a reputation for calmness. The question is that really true internally? Now, you've already heard my story about managing in a crisis, where I thought I was calm, but other people didn't. What I've heard from clients is they have a reputation for being calm, but internally, hot mess. Being quiet does not mean you're calm. It doesn't mean you're actively listening. It doesn't mean you're able to demonstrate empathy and understanding. It means, if you can embrace it, that you have that in you. But you've got to be able to nurture that in yourself. You've got to be mindful. You've got to make sure that you understand what your own head is doing and what you're demonstrating, which is, it's really powerful to demonstrate calmness. I had to learn how to do it, and it's done me so much good. So if you've got it innately, you've got an additional leg up from people like me who aren't naturally externally looking calm. But you've got to deal with your internal dialogue. I want you to embrace that quiet side. I want you to deal with anything that is saying to yourself, all the noise that's like, you're not doing good enough. What about this? What about that? What about the other? You've got to be able to calm that piece down so you can actively listen. So you are demonstrating empathy. So you are allowing conversations with your team. That means everyone gets the voice. Your naturally quiet personality might mean that you don't like to interrupt those who dominate conversations. And that's not healthy. Being quiet doesn't mean you don't hold power. In fact, it means you have to wield your power very carefully. And I want you to realize that your ability to listen also means you're highly tuned in to your team's concerns, needs, and motivations. It gives you a better idea of when to interrupt somebody and say, hey, we need to listen to so-and-so over here. It's very easy to fall into the trap of spending too much time listening without making decisions. So you want to be listening to all these concerns, but make decisions. Tiny decisions include, you know what, we need to talk to this person. Bigger decisions are, we've talked about this enough. If you find that your team's going round and round in circles, or this is the 5th time they brought it up and there's no further progress, make a decision to move things forward. Equally, make a decision to stop talking and just move this item on because it doesn't need any more discussion. I think sometimes if we're naturally reserved, it's really stepping out of our comfort zone to put our foot down. Equally, being quiet means it can be very uncomfortable to be vulnerable. Share ideas that are not fully formed. Gather feedback. Maybe we're quiet because it's painful for us to ask for stuff or to share something that's not perfect. So it can lead to a perfectionism tendency, being quiet. Your quietness will naturally encourage feedback, which can also make it very vulnerable making for us. I certainly would say I've had a lot of burnt out quiet leaders working with me because they're getting more feedback than the loud ones, and therefore it's overwhelming. Now, the other side of it is when I've worked with louder leaders, they aren't getting feedback or they're not listening to it, and we have to work on that piece. But your quietness probably encourages more feedback because you give more space for it. But you need to demonstrate your comfort in asking for it as well. You need to demonstrate your own comfort in asking, receiving, and actioning, rather than having an internal thing that just eats you up. The most significant gift of a quiet leader is that you stay calm. You maintain your composure, even when you don't feel it inside. This is such a gift for resilience, morale, focused decision-making. Just the fact that you're externally calm can mean you can calm yourself, because calmness is to some extent a choice. I say to some extent because it doesn't always feel that way. I certainly, at the point of recording this, moving house soon, definitely not calm. There's lots of stress. I know I have a choice to do things like meditation and even some yoga, some journaling, slowing down to speed up. I pause. I think things through. I process my emotions rather than just burying them, allowing more calmness. Now, I'm not saying I'm calm. I'm not saying that at all, but I have a choice in how I tackle this. If you're naturally quiet, remember you can have a naturally meditative approach. You get to slow down. You get to think through things in their entirety. You get to be the voice of calm at the decision-making table. And when you do this, again, you're going to make better decisions, have more effective outcomes. One of my clients, Chloe, excelled in listening and maintaining that calm under pressure. But she worked in a really fast-paced tech company, which tech companies aren't fast-paced, so it's the next question. But and she found that those qualities really helped her build trust and really strong relationships with her team. Her team knew they could approach her with any issue, confident that she would listen carefully. She'd give really thoughtful feedback. During critical projects, when the timeline was difficult, her calm demeanor was focused, motivated, even as challenges came up left, right, and center. She took time to consider all options before making decisions, which meant that she had really good strategies and had a reputation for great project completion rates. Her leadership style was about fostering a supportive and collaborative team environment, but this meant that her team's productivity and resilience, crucially, was one of the best in the company. Her calmness, her listening, meant that she had a team-centric approach that meant her team had lower turnover and more delivery than every other part of the company. Now, one of the things that I worked with her on was actually explaining this to other executives because they wanted to know why she was doing so well, and she had no idea. So we were honing and refining it, but then in the latter part of us working together, we were actually rolling this out across the company and actually understanding what she was doing and how to teach others in the company how to do this. That was a real eye-opener for her. She's like, I didn't know I even did this. When we promote team and collective achievement, we are quietly emphasizing the importance of working together. And this happens as a quiet leader as well. It means making sure, even though you're quiet, your team is aligned. They know what their objectives are. They emphasize that success is a collective effort. Contrary to what we might think, those loud individuals sometimes seem to be more focused on themselves, their achievements and their needs. And I'm sure you've come across such a person. If you're naturally quiet, it gives you just a bit more space to ensure your team gets the attention they deserve. Now, what we have to watch out for is that you still get what you need. But make sure you are celebrating your team's milestones publicly. This is something we might not do very well. You might be out of your comfort zone. It's crucial that you and your team are recognized, valued, acknowledged. And this means informing your peers and boss of your achievements. This is something we actually worked on with Chloe, that lady I was talking about a moment ago. She was doing an amazing work. She was the most successful leader in the organization. But when I first started working with her, that wasn't recognized because she was one of those leaders who just kept her head down and thought they'll all notice. They don't. She had to learn how to get comfortable with telling her peers and her boss about her and her team's achievements. It isn't about shooting it from the rooftops, but it is about making sure your team gets the recognition they deserve. If not, your team will appear irrelevant, even if they're not, because nobody really knows what you're doing. I almost feel like it's one of those double-edged swords. If you're really slick at what you do, if you're great at what you do and you just deliver consistently, people don't pay attention. And the mistake I see in some big companies is when they do layoffs of certain teams that are actually fundamental to the company, because that team isn't making any noise because they're so good at what they do. They lay off that entire team, that entire product line, that entire thing, and then wonder why everything falls apart. Because that's actually the bit that was working. So make sure people know the impact you and your team have. Don't be afraid to share. You can also, though, get your team to do some of the legwork here. I think team meetings should include a section where each person celebrates someone else in the team. I love doing this. I don't do this enough myself. And so this is a good reminder to me. I think it's great to get people to celebrate each other, not just ourselves. Doing it ourselves, saying, I did this, is beautiful because it builds morale internally. You have to get comfortable saying, I did something good. But I think getting somebody else to say, hey, so-and-so did this, and that's really exciting to me, is just so beautiful. Just be cautious of building too much competitiveness or someone always missing out here. I've seen this happen occasionally where one person always gets recognition and nobody else does, and it just generates nastiness. This particularly happens when it's a senior leader rewarding people because it tends to go to their favorites. If it's your whole team, it's less likely to be an issue. Just watch out for that. But I love getting my team to share in Slack every week. We have a weekly wins discussion in Slack. And one thing I absolutely love is that every member of my team will pop in and be like, oh my God, that's so cool to so-and-so. And it's like everybody every week. There's not like one person we all favor, but we're all getting to share in each other's celebrations and lifting each other up. Make sure that we are encouraging the right behaviors here. Hold regular team meetings. Chair that meeting. It doesn't mean you do all the talking. It means you own the agenda. It means you say, we need to move on here. It means that you get to resolutions. You might be afraid of getting to resolutions because it means decisions, but move the conversation forward. So as a quiet leader, the few words you do say need to be really purposeful. Not just because you've thought things through really well and you have a great idea, but also because you control the narrative, you control the room, you control the meeting. When we do this, we create amazing psychological safety. If we're a loud leader who maybe just shuts people down or promotes competitiveness, our team dynamics get uncomfortable. But if we're the person who quietly asserts when it's appropriate, our team knows what to expect. And you're going to have great psychological safety in one-on-one settings, and it should translate into team meetings. If it's not translating into team meetings, it means that there's something you're not tackling in the team setting. So if in your one-on-ones, your team is really open with you, shares a lot of cool stuff, and then in the team dynamic, they just don't, I'd have a look at, are you controlling those conversations you need to? Now let's talk about your authenticity. One of the reasons, if you have resonated with today's episode, that I want you to lean into being a quiet leader is because the best leaders are authentic. If you're being authentic to who you are because you are naturally quiet and you just learn how to speak up when you really need to, your team members will see that. They will see you as genuine, not putting on a facade, which builds trust. And trust is the currency of being the leader that everybody wants to follow. It's a strength. It is the strength that includes deep listening, thoughtfulness, being calm, being composed. It means that everybody is going to follow you in the good times and through the crises. I want you to let go of any stereotypes you have about being the quiet leader. You don't need to be big and bold to have a significant impact. Your diversity in your quietness is what is going to allow those around you to do even more. Remember, your leadership is a personal journey. You are unique. It's why I say at the end of every episode, embrace your uniqueness, because the world really does need that, right? Your uniqueness and an honest inventory of who you are authentically, what is and isn't working, and using the bits that aren't working as a way to understand how could I be authentically different so that it does work is your advantage. Embracing your authenticity is the thing that's going to resonate, it's going to make a difference, and it's going to drive success. Okay, let me just recap before we wrap up today. I want you to embrace your authentic quiet tendencies if that is you. If it's not you, I want you to ask yourself, what from today can you bring in? Where do you need to slow down and be a bit more quiet and a bit more calm? What can you learn from the naturally quiet people around you that is useful? Equally, if you are seeing somebody in your team who's a naturally quiet person, don't dismiss that. Instead, encourage it. Focus on developing their active listening, their calm demeanor under pressure, their success. Allow them to be supported and produce productive work in a noisy environment by providing a quiet environment. And remember, whether you're naturally quiet or loud, you have to publicly recognize your team's success, even if that's stepping out of your comfort zone. Ensure their hard work is recognized and valued, and your hard work too. You can leverage this amazing ability of you or others as being quiet leaders. Lean into your strengths, understand the small bits that are holding you back, and build strong roots to empower yourself through those bits that aren't maybe naturally supporting you. I encourage you to go and try this today. Right? Whatever situation you're in, go and embrace who you are. Go and embrace who one of your team is. Leverage these strengths of a unique leader and look at how you're growing. Look at areas for improvement because we're never done, but take steps to be the best you can authentically. I would love to hear from you if this episode has resonated with you. Even though I'm not a naturally quiet leader, so much of what I've said today has applied to me at some point in my career. And I wish I'd heard this earlier. I wish I'd had permission to be myself earlier in my career. So let me know if this is the permission you needed. I hope you didn't need permission, but if it is, let me know. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what challenges you faced. Have you overcome them? How have you overcome them? Come and take a listen to this podcast one more time and let me know how you're getting on. Thank you for everything today. Be that quiet, powerful leader. And remember, until next time, stay on your tech leadership game and follow your dreams because the world really does need that uniqueness that you bring as a leading woman in tech.